Just finished up practice. Encouraged by the way that this group is responding. Ultimately, I think this team understands that results do matter, and also, we're not defined by one bad day or one bad game. Got to respond, and this group, so far in our preparation for Western Illinois, has done a great job of that. Full focus on Western Illinois. Had an opportunity yesterday morning to put Tulane to bed and learn and grow. But full focus on a Western Illinois team that's on the rise. I've known Joe Davis for a long time through recruiting ties in Illinois. He spent some time at University of Northern Iowa prior to my time there. Joe and I used to work the showcase here together as visiting coaches. Got a tremendous amount of respect for him. Did a really good job last year, taking a program that was struggling. Got them to 4 wins. They've done a good job in their recruiting. The personnel and the talent that they have on the roster, is improving. They got some good players. I think Joe and his staff do a good job of being creative and finding ways to keep you uncomfortable. New defensive coordinator this year, so figuring out what that's going to look like and what tendencies exist there. Great challenge in front of us. We got to be at our best. The way that we've been practicing over the course of the last 9 months needs to show up on Friday night.
Jake. Coach, after Saturday's game, John Summerall was very vocal about the decision for Northwestern to not let Tulane wear white uniforms during their 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina game, calling it disrespectful. Do you have any comment on Coach Summerall's post-game remarks? Was this something he spoke to you about either in the lead-up to the game or after?
Yeah, the second that I heard about his comments post-game, I immediately tracked down John's number and gave him a call, left him a message. He texted me back later Saturday night. We had a chance to connect yesterday, which I appreciated. Caught me off guard, but I understand where he's coming from. I thought he did a great job of utilizing that to really motivate his team. They played inspired football. Ultimately, the decision around that was certainly not a gesture of disrespect. I don't pretend to understand what the city of New Orleans has been through, but what I can tell you is that this university, myself, have a tremendous amount of respect for the impact that Hurricane Katrina had on New Orleans in that region. I had an opportunity to see it firsthand. I mean, May of 2006, myself and 20 of my teammates and coaches got in, vans and drove down to New Orleans and spent a week, mucking houses and just trying to do our small part and trying to help that community. It was, seeing it firsthand, it was devastating. And the resiliency that New Orleans has shown, the toughness that they've shown, the community that's shown up the last 2 decades for that city to be where it is at today, certainly not a gesture of disrespect. Having a chance to return to New Orleans for the first time since that trip, I think where that city's at right now is a reflection of the people that call it home, and it was good to have an opportunity to talk with John yesterday.
Charlie, Coach, 2-parter here. Firstly, how would you evaluate Garner Wallace's performance on Saturday? And secondly, what does it mean for him, and what does it say about him to step up in his 5th year in the program as a depth piece and really perform the way he did?
Yeah. The thing that's exciting about Garner is he stayed the course. Started to make his name on special teams. Coach Barnett gets here. Just continuing to improve. And someone this past spring that we just said how we can't not have this guy on the field, and he's really shown up, and to see him show up the way that he did on Saturday, need that level of play to continue to trend in that direction. But I'll say this boldly: I think Garner Wallace has an opportunity to have a huge impact, not even on the next game, but this entire season, and really commend him for the way that he's stayed the course. He's one of those guys we talk about. Guys blossom at different times in their development. Garner Wallace over the last year has really come into his own.
Coach, obviously there was some discussion after that first game against Tulane about just the team's approach and where to be aggressive, where to be conservative, and just more generally zooming out, I wanted to ask about your approach to modern football analytics and what that looks like for Northwestern as a program, and especially how that's evolved for you from your first year coming in as an interim to now at year 3 at the helm.
Yeah, it's certainly part of the conversations. We have weekly meetings, coordinator meetings. We have the analytics in front of us. We discuss it. What we've done a much better job, what I've done a much better job of this year is really sitting down this off season and talking strategically, like, what is our plan? Where do we think our team's at? What things can we leverage? What things do we have to limit? A book can tell you some things, but the context of where we're at personnel-wise, how we're playing, how the weather is affecting things. But we go into every game having a very clear and detailed plan. And ultimately, it can be coach speak of, like, in the red zone we need to score touchdowns, but what are we doing to help our offense actually execute on that? Where do we value field position more than an opportunity to go for it on fourth down? Where do we value points over an opportunity to go for it on fourth down? All things that we've worked through as a staff, things that I won't share openly on what that plan is, but I'm excited about where we're at with that plan. And I think the fine balance, to answer your question directly, is using analytics, collecting the information, but not being just blindly, okay, the book says this, so we're going to do this, and contextualizing every decision.
Coach, you were missing 2 defensive starters on Saturday in Damon Walters and Ori Adei. Do you have any updates on what they've been dealing with and, when they project to return, if they'll be available for this Friday? Yeah,
I won't get in the habit of sharing directly what they're dealing with, but what I will tell you is Damon right now is week to week. I mean, we'll know more tomorrow in terms of his availability, this week. But excited to get him back. What that timeline looks like, still uncertain. Really optimistic about Ori. I mean, he was out there practicing today. So, hoping that we see him at full speed on Friday. But everything that young man's been through, cannot wait to see him back out there on game day for the Cats.
Matt. Coach, you mentioned what sounded like, community service with you and your team going down to New Orleans. Can you share a little more about, what organization that was through, who initiated that? Again, just tell me a little bit more about what that process was like.
Yeah, I believe it was through an organization called Samaritan's Purse. I believe it was Matt Entz, actually, our defensive coordinator at the time at Winona State, had brought up the opportunity to our leadership council, myself, Colin Charleston, Scott Peterson, other guys that I played college football with. Bruce Carpenter, who's a high school coach up in the Twin Cities now, was our offensive coordinator at the time at Winona State. So it was a couple coaches, a bunch of players. Finals got done in early May. Loaded up in a bunch of vans and headed down. And it was like I said. It was devastating to see it, but hopefully we played a small role in having a positive impact on some people's lives. And ultimately, I think it comes back to the respect and appreciation for the way the city of New Orleans has rebounded the last 2 decades, and speaks to the character of the people that call it home.
And then you said that Coach Summerall's comments caught you off guard. Was this a situation where, there's been reporting from Matt Fortuna that the request was put in on August 17th? When you say it caught you off guard, was it something where they didn't mention the connection to Katrina, or what aspect of that caught you off guard? And what was your thought process on whether it was you who made the decision or Northwestern as a program to not making the change in jerseys?
Yeah, the decisions like that are always gonna come down to alignment between myself, Mark Jackson, Pat Goss. Love the way that the 3 of us work together on all decisions around this program. But ultimately, certainly not a gesture of disrespect. But the timing of the request did impact our ability to honor the request.
Coach, it seemed like you guys were really trying to get Ricky Amaraze involved in the offense in a big way. 8 targets, but only 1 catch. What do you think you guys need to do to make sure that when you're targeting him, he's able to make catches and make plays in space?
Yeah, it's timing. It's Ricky continuing. First game back, first catch of his college career, I think was for a 22-yard gain. But I think even just with more game reps between Preston and Ricky, there's going to be opportunities to continue to get him the ball. But, you know, the thing about Ricky, big, physical, maybe covered, but can create separation at the top of the route. You know, we're going to have to continue to make sure that he's utilized heavily within our offense.
Coach, you've been in a very similar situation before in the 23 season opener against Rutgers. We have a veteran quarterback who sort of struggles to get settled. I mean, what did you learn from sort of that experience that you're leaning on now as you sort of look to move forward from this season opener in Tulane?
Yeah, you can't panic, you know, and I'll be the first to tell you, like, super competitive, super self-critical. Like, speaking of myself, I think Preston Stone probably, you know, embodies some similar qualities. It can be really easy to be so emotional after a tough loss, especially when you were so excited and confident about your preparation going into the game, to kind of spiral into this panic. And the reality is, as a program, we just need to take a deep breath and say, you know what? One day doesn't redefine the last 9 months of work that we've put in. Let's also acknowledge that we played really poorly. Okay, and let's get back to work. Take full ownership on it when we review the tape, take a deep breath on to Western Illinois, and let's make sure we show up as a much better version of ourselves Friday night.
Coach, you guys seem to have a very tight-knit linebacker group and, you know, a lot of depth in the defensive line, but allowed 269 rushing yards. What do you attribute that to, and how can you improve that kind of moving forward?
Yeah, I certainly will not explain through the stats of that. That's an unacceptable number. Tim McGraw will be the first one to tell you that. Our entire defense would be the first one to tell you that. Two plays that really stand out to me that really ballooned that were you know, the lead draw, explosive touchdown just inside the 2-minute, which was a critical juncture in the game. And then, you know, we're expecting them to throw a Hail Mary at the end of the half. You know, the quarterback scrambles, picks up a big chunk. But ultimately, you take those two plays away, and we're still not, you know, playing at the level we want to in terms of run defense. It's a credit to Tulane, their run offense, their offensive line, their coaching staff, and also an acknowledgement that, you know, if we want to be at our best Friday night and consistently win in the Big Ten, we're going to have to run the ball consistently, and we're going to have to stop the run.
Just in terms of running back usage, it was 9 carries for Caleb, 8 for Joe, and 6 for Cam. And just wanted to ask, should we expect to see similar distribution, relatively split going forward, or is that one a little bit more of just the product of game script? Specifically wanting to ask about Cam Porter getting just 6 carries when he's been a guy who's carried the rock 12+ times in the past.
All three will be utilized heavily. And dang it, we need to play better. We need to play better in the first half. We need to play with a lead. We need to, you know, keep games within 1-score games. Even if we do get, you know, put back on our heels a little bit, you know, in the first quarter, responding in the second quarter, keeping it tight, responding in the second half. Really difficult down 3 scores, you know, when the offense gets the ball back the first time, 8 minutes in the third quarter, whatever it was, to actually get in a rhythm and stay committed to those guys getting touches. All three will be utilized heavily. All three have unique skill sets. All three need to be critical pieces of what we're doing as an offense.
Coach, speaking to the receivers, Griffin Wilde in his first game against FBS competition, team's leading receiver, 6 grabs for 64 yards. What did you see from him, both in terms of against Tulane and in terms of going forward, what he can bring to this offense?
Yeah, intense competitor, doesn't say much, just shows up and goes to work. Shows up the same way on game day. You know, I think there's a tremendous amount of respect from our entire football team of who Griffin is and the way that he operates. Again, we knew coming into the season, we've said it, that room is unproven. The room did some good things. Plenty of opportunities left out on the field with some drops. We can be better with our ball placement from the quarterback position. We can do a better job of protecting our quarterback. But Griffin will be a critical piece of our passing game all season long. And, you know, there's going to be a lot of other guys in that room that need to continue to elevate their level of play for us to throw the ball the way that we want to. And we've seen that in practice. But, again, just like we've talked about, we need to perform better on game day.
You know, coaches have different philosophies when it comes to how you treat a key player after a tough game, you know, whether that's personal meeting, business as usual, encouraging or challenging. You know, what has your interactions with Preston been since the Tulane game?
Yeah, you know, steady, consistent. Truth is kind. He knows he didn't play well. He knows he needs to play better. You know, it was our first time in the arena with him in a game day to recognize, you know, the way that he sees the game in a competitive live format, and maybe, you know, rein things in here a little bit or clarify, like Preston, you know, you don't have to do it all for us, right? Just play your game, man. Just be you. I really appreciate Preston and I's relationship. And honestly, the first interaction, Matt, was in the locker room post game, like acknowledgement to the team. We can't win football games when we turn the ball over 5 times. And Preston Stone, I got your back. We got your back. We believe in you, man. Let's respond. You know, we want to show how mentally tough and physically tough we are individually and collectively as a football team. We'll show it in terms of the way that we respond. And I know that our entire football team feels the same way I do about it.
Speaking of the post-game locker room, Coach, in the past you've talked about good teams are coach-led, but oftentimes great teams are player-led. So I'm really curious, just after a tough season opening loss like that, what you saw in the post-game locker room from the players, and specifically if there were any guys that were vocal leaders and how you would characterize the attitude this week and mentality and practice and everything like that.
In the locker room, quiet, silent, not a whole lot of talking. If there was anything, you know, the occasional pick me up of like, hey man, we're in a bounce back. You know, pick your head up. We got a short week. We don't got time to hang our heads. Pick your head up. And it started yesterday with, you know, the first interaction we had as a team. You know, our leadership, owning everything, no pointing fingers, first practice opportunity. I mean, guys just bringing a ton of energy and excitement for the next opportunity. That leadership isn't just fair weathered. It's showing up we talked about adversity is going to hit. Well, adversity punched us in the mouth on Saturday. Here it is. How are we going to respond? So far, I've been really impressed with our leadership.
Of the 15-player transfer class that you brought in, just 5 recorded 20-plus snaps at Tulane. You know, there were some depth pieces in young players, but I think that number's lower than a lot of people expected. Do you feel you're able to, you know, based on your offseason, that you accurately assessed and filled positions of need, or after a week, are you kind of wishing that maybe transfers were brought in at different positions?
Let's talk January 15th. I'm excited about that group, and we got to keep evaluating how we maximize our roster, but time will tell, Matt.
Jake? Coach, career high 9 carries for Caleb Koomaf at 34 yards and also caught a pass. What have you seen from him just in terms of his development from the end of last season to this point now, where he's able to take on a much bigger load in the backfield?
Yeah, you know, it's being an every down back. It's his competitiveness, his maturity, his leadership, his commitment to special teams. He's in like Coach Creighton's office asking to, you know, be more involved in special teams. I think that shows his commitment to the team. Some that's shown up consistently in practice is his ability to make people miss, break tackles at the second and third level that turn into explosive plays. And I'm excited for us to get in a rhythm on offense that gives him some consistent opportunities to have that stuff show up on game day, because he has the ability to be not just a consistent back, but an explosive back.
Yeah, Coach, you talked about first game with Preston, going into the field of battle, going into the field of play, and obviously the first drive didn't go well. You had the sack fumble on the first snap of the game, and then the interception to close the series. How do you think that might have impacted maybe the coaching staff and also Preston's mentality going forward, and how do you hope to avoid something like that in the future?
Yeah, it's hard to say. What I will tell you is I've seen Preston have a bad series in practice. You know, I've watched his tape, you know, in the past when we evaluated where he had a bad series in the game and has responded well. You know, I don't think that impacted everything going. It was certainly not the way that we wanted to start, by any means, and need to do a much better job of, you know, cleaning some things up for him in terms of like giving him flexibility to have answers if we're in a disadvantaged look, but also a level of trust that, you know, handing the ball off behind this offensive line is not ever a bad decision. Like we can move the ball consistently within our run game. And ultimately we got to take a great deal of pride. I've been impressed with the improvements in our protection with the offense line, but we got to take a great deal of pride of keeping Preston's jersey clean throughout the game. And you know, that first pick he throws, he's taking a big hit. And we all know this, that, you know, if coach on the defense side of the ball, if you can impact the quarterback early and get after him, like that's advantage defense at that point.
Charlie? Coach, on that third drive of the game, lone scoring drive, what really stood out to you in rewatching film and how you guys were able to move the ball, especially in Preston's play where he went 5 for 5?
Yeah, I think the thing that stood out is just like efficiency and like there's some chunk plays in there, but like we're just operating. Like we're not doing anything special. The defense isn't busting. We're operating. We're efficient. We're executing. We got a little bit of rhythm to us. And then another thing that stands out is like we got to finish. Like mentally, there's got to be a mentality when the ball gets inside the 15-yard line. Like we're scoring a touchdown. I thought our conditioning was in a good spot. Overall, it showed up to be in a pretty good spot, but I think just some younger guys within that group understanding what it looks like to like finish a drive with the same level of urgency, technique, pad level that we started the drive with is going to be the difference between us scoring touchdowns consistently or potentially puttering out and having to kick a field goal.
Speaking of field goal, kicker there was Luke Akers. Are there injury concerns for Jack Olson, or is that depth chart decision?
Jack was full go today at practice, and certainly could see a situation where Jack's utilized at some point, but went with Luke in week 1. Got to continue to manage to make sure we're putting him in a good situation, Matt, in terms of the load that he's carrying as our starting punter as well. But I was excited for Luke to see his first one go through the uprights. Did a great job punting the ball. Excited for him this season.
So is there some kind of like distance marker where it switches over to Jack, or is Luke the starting kicker right now?
No, Luke as of right now is our starting kicker.
And then just as you've dived into the tape for Western Illinois this week, what have you seen? Any players or schematic things that really stand out as you approach Friday's game?
Yeah, I think the quarterback is a good player, athletic. Like it'll be interesting to see how they utilize him, whether that's with traditional passing game, RPO, quarterback run game. They got some guys, whether returners to Western Illinois or transfers that have produced at the wide receiver position. A couple big backs that can break tackles. A tight end that vet has done some really good things. On the defensive side of the ball, I'm impressed. I mean, like I said, I think Joe's done a great job with the personnel. Some big bodies interiorly. That Illinois, I think, as the game went on, found a way to wear down a little bit. But early in the game, I mean, those guys are good players. A couple guys on the edge that show some twitch and ability to set an edge and pass rush. Long corners, like, again, a lot of familiarity with Western Illinois in their time in the Missouri Valley, my time at North Dakota State. Really impressed with Joe's, work since he's been at Western Illinois, and also impressed, like, he's been really willing to get outside the box and creative, specifically on the offense side of the ball to stress opponents.
Coach, on defense, Mac Uline and Aiden Hubbard both had some fairly sizable roles last year, but stepping up big time this year. Both of them recorded tackles for loss. Aiden had a big-time sack, I think, on one of Tulane's field goal drives. What can you say about them and the way that they've stepped up and taken on those bigger roles this year?
Yeah, Mac, very much a vocal leader, a commanding leader. Takes so much pride in this program and his personal performance as well, and really thankful for his leadership and, excited about him performing at a really high level in his senior year. And then Aiden Hubbard, kind of like that just cool, calm, collected, hyper internal competitive individual that is just, with Hubs, I'll tell anyone, I think we got some special DNs on this roster. I think Aiden Hubbard's one of the best in the Big Ten. I tell any NFL organization that walks through our doors, you want to bring a guy in that every single coach that ever coaches him isn't going to allow you to ever let him walk out the door. Like that Aiden Hubbard's the type of guy that if you coach him, you see the value he brings to that room every single day. And he's playing with a level of confidence right now that really excites me.
Last one, Charlie. Coach, how would you evaluate your red zone defense? On the first red zone trip for Tulane, they scored. On the latter two, kicked field goals, forced field goals. What kind of changed between those two possessions for you?
Yeah, I think a little bit, it's so easy as a coach. I've heard it said for I don't know how many years I've been coaching, but the last 16, 17 years, we got to start fast. Well, guess what? Your opponent's saying they got to start fast too. Like, what are you doing to actually do that? But ultimately, if the game hasn't started the right way that we want it to, coming off the coin toss or how the offense operates in their first series, in that situation, we got to find a way to force them to kick a field goal. There's some things from a staff standpoint we need to clean up on that first series. There's some things from an execution standpoint that we need to clean up. Was proud of the way that our guys responded as the course of the day went on, of bowling up in those critical situations, of forcing Tulane to kick field goals. That has to be a staple of what we do in terms of if people are able to move the ball at some point during the game, we have to bow up in the red zone. And, we have a saying around our place, threes won't get us beat. So the opening drive needs to be better, but was impressed with the response as the game went on in those situations.
All right, thanks, Coach.
Thanks, everyone.